When Columbus and his crews first set out from Spain to cross the Atlantic, the vast uncharted waters were simply called the Ocean Sea. Everybody knew that they were sailing literally into the unknown. But there was an extraordinary prize at stake, the most valuable prize in the world. The riches of Asia, pearls, gold, and spices from China, India, and Japan. These were the oil of the age. Europe had a great appetite for them, but had virtually no supplies of its own, so trading them could make fortunes. Until now, the only way for Europeans to get these luxuries was to travel eastwards overland, through the Middle East, Persia, and Afghanistan. It was a slow and perilous journey. Now the race was on to find a faster route. The Portuguese, a great seafaring nation, were starting to explore a route that went round the south of Africa. But Columbus proposed what he thought was a much shorter, quicker journey, sailing in the opposite direction, west across the Ocean Sea, all the way to China. But Columbus had no proof that the westward passage even existed, as few maps showed anything beyond the wide waters of the Atlantic. As far as they were concerned, nothing but a few scattered islands stood between Europe and Asia. The continents of North and South America simply didn't exist. To make his first journey, Columbus needed a huge amount of financial backing. This was the space race of the day, and just as expensive, as European nations competed to make the breakthrough by sea to Asia. With perfect timing, he approached the King and Queen of Spain. They'd just won a costly war. The moment could not have been better. Their long battle with the Moors had left the Spanish rulers desperate for new sources of wealth. On his first voyage, Columbus took 3 ships. His flagship was the Santa Maria, a slow, old-fashioned merchant ship. But his favorite was the Nina, the latest modern design. Called a caravel, this type of ship launched a new era of exploration. They suited the job perfectly. They were small, only just over 70 feet long, shorter than a tennis court. They were only about 20 feet wide, only able to carry about 50 tons of cargo. But a caravel was light and nimble enough to ride the great waves of the Atlantic, whilst also being strong, fast, and maneuverable. It had a very shallow draft, so it could sail in just 7 feet of water, making it perfect to explore unknown harbors. But above all, the caravel was fast. But even at these speeds, Columbus and his crew had an enormous distance to travel to find land. But Columbus's obsession was not shared by his crew. By October 1st, Columbus's fleet had traveled over 3,000 miles. Far from Spain, many of the men became afraid.
The further we sail from home, the greater grows their distress and unrest. They complain more every hour.
Stories abounded among sailors of the monsters that stalked the distant ocean. One sailor had even reported seeing a sea snake that put his head on high and snatched away men. Over 60 days since they left Spain, Columbus's crew are suffering from the hardships of life on the open sea. The food is rotten, and the stench below decks has driven many of them to sleep in the open. The situation on board is ripe for mutiny. Finally, a band of sailors demand that Columbus turn the ships around and return to Spain. But in a final gamble, Columbus holds off the mutineers by convincing them to back him for just 3 more days. After all, they've spotted vegetation in the water, a sign that shows land should be near. And it seems tantalizingly close. An eager lookout reports land ahead.
Tierra! Tierra!
But turns out just to be low cloud. At last, on the third day, Friday, October 11th, 1492, Columbus does see land, just in time to save him from all-out mutiny. The following day, he goes ashore.
At dawn, I went ashore in the ship's boat. Armed, I unfurled the royal banner, and the captains brought the flags.
The flags bearing the standards of the monarchs of Spain claimed the new world for a European power. Believing himself to be in the Far East, Columbus calls the islands the Indies. In fact, he is on the edge of a new continent, the Americas.
Gloria al Padre, al Hijo, e al Spirito Santo, como era en el principio.
After a prayer of thanksgiving, I ordered the captains to bear faith and witness that I was taking possession of this island for the king and the queen.
Yo tomo posesión de esa isla.
The entire company of the fleet bore witness to this act.
En nombre de los reyes de España.
To this island I gave the name San Salvador, in honor of our blessed Lord and Savior.
Columbus hopes that the discovery of Hispaniola will prove to the world his talents as an explorer and win him a personal fortune from its natural riches. But the paradise he describes will lead only to short-term success and ultimately to disaster. In 1492, the island seems like a new world to Columbus, but it is far from uninhabited. Around 100,000 people are already living here. They call themselves the Taino. Columbus, thinking he has arrived in the Far East, the Indies, calls them Indians. The Tainos, who believe their gods arrive by sea, think Columbus is divine. What they don't realize is that these gods intend to exploit the island's people and its resources. Columbus wastes no time. Within days, he finds gold in Taino villages. It's exactly what he wants, a rich source he can plunder for himself and his Spanish paymasters. Leaving 39 men behind on Hispaniola, Columbus returns to Spain as a conquering hero.